Quite the way to start the day here, Moz.
But the best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup, is what I am
coffee.
told.
Unless you're a chupacabra, then it's goat's blood.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to the edge of nowhere. Monster Lore Tour Podcast.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this 30th episode of the Monster Lore Tour Paranormal Deep Dives from the Edge of Nowhere podcast. I am your host, Jeremy Carr, here along with my co-host and the hell to my Dave, Mr. Matt Ozero, a.k.a. the Moz. How we doing today, Moz?
I'm sorry, Jeremy. I'm afraid I can't do that whole hell thing.
Oh, boy.
I'm going to start, glitching right off the bat.
He's going to blow me out the airlock, everybody. Hold on here. But let's start with our old business before we get into the heart of our episode here. You have some notes from the Rapid episode for us, Moz.
Do I?
You do. You took them last night when we were editing.
Oh, man. But did I find any of the answers? I guess I can't. Yeah. See how you're getting me here?
It hasn't been very long. We literally edited that episode last night, and then we woke up and got right back to recording. So.
True. The last episode, I mentioned this Ixt, I-X-T, and I said it was Tlingit shaman and Nahuatl shaman, and I don't think that's the case. Ixt is Tlingit for shaman, but it means something else in Nahuatl, and I'll have to find that out. But I have an US file related to the word Ixt, by the way, so I know that's kind of odd, but one of these days I have a magic chai when we do hallucinations or something. I don't know. Let's just do hallucinations today, and then I'll tell that story.
I'd love to do some hallucinations today, but we have an episode to record first.
And I was going to look at, see how far, the Indian Ocean was from Komodo Island, see how close it was. I did not do that.
So we're not at all prepared for old business is what we're telling ourselves now?
No, I also have on this piece of paper the...
We're going to have to old business our old business.
Yes.
All right, we will bring you that old business in the next episode, apparently.
Yeah.
Because we did not have time to prepare. But one more thing before we get into it. If you have a chance, just hit all those happy little fun buttons on whatever platform you're on, like subscribe, share. If you have an extra minute and could leave us a rating and review, that would be most helpful, most appreciated. We really do thank you for any time you put into that. But all right, you ready for this, Moz?
Yep-er.
Hollow moon theory. This is the final, real, actual conclusion of the whole probes thing, because anyone who's been with us for a while, hollow moon theory was actually the Ahuguano theory for part 4 of the probes, the culminating probes episode.
Right.
And I determined that it was too big for a segment. It needed its own episode. I am finally doing it.
Well, it's a planetoid.
Finally
it is too
doing
big.
it.
It's too big.
I made everybody wait so the tension could build.
There you go.
But now I'm going to admit, when I first heard a hollow moon theory, I did laugh it off as just kind of a wild conspiracy nonsense thing. But when I got into my 4-part alien probe deep dive, I knew I would have to get into the hollow moon theory. And some of my research kind of made me think it's not quite so much nonsense after all, maybe. Maybe. We'll let you decide.
Yeah.
But let's start with 8 anomalous facts about the moon and build from there, okay? You ready, Moz?
I am ready.
All right, number 1. The moon has an oddly perfect circular orbit around the Earth. From what we know about how planets and other objects move through the solar system, orbits tend to be rather elliptical rather than circular, because nature doesn't really work in perfect shapes, from what we can tell. But the moon's orbit is a perfect circle around the Earth. It's like the Giotto of moons.
Right.
This is one of my favorite artist stories from the Renaissance era. Giotto was an Italian artist back in the Renaissance. Pope Benedict XI sent a messenger to Giotto asking him to send a drawing to demonstrate his skill. So in front of the messenger, Giotto drew a single circle on a piece of paper and told the messenger to bring that back to the Pope. Now I'm sure the messenger thought he was getting one pulled over on him, or thought Giotto was messing with the Pope or something, but when the Pope saw it and found that it was drawn quickly freehand, he was stunned, because the circle was so perfect you couldn't do better with a pair of compasses. So he free-handed a perfect circle.
So did they burn him at the stake for witchcraft?
No, they probably gave him a bunch of money to do some paintings for him. But if you're not sure why this is impressive, try drawing a perfect circle freehand. It's going to be impossible, really, because nature doesn't work in perfect shapes, and humans are nature. So you feel me on this, Mom?
Yes.
All right, number 2. The moon is also oddly large. It's a full quarter of the size of the body it orbits. In proportion to the Earth, or I should say in proportion to its planet, our moon is the largest moon in known space. It's huge for the planet that it's around. But at the same time, the moon has a notably low mass for its volume. We can calculate this based on its size and gravity. Specifically, the Earth is 3.66 times bigger than the moon, but it is 81 times more massive.
The moon is more massive?
No, the Earth is more massive than the moon. Yeah, the Earth is 3.66 times bigger, not even 4 times bigger than the moon, but it's 81 times more massive.
Thus potentially hollow.
So the moon is oversized and underweight, so much so that it is an apparent anomaly compared to all the moons of the other planets in our system, and even the ones we've managed to discover outside our system. As far as why it is so large yet light, no one seems to know. Totally anomalous. And that takes us to number 3. To make this matter even more confounding, our research on the development of the moon seems to lead to statistical conflicts. You see, the dating of the moon seems to make no sense. The age of the oldest rocks that we have discovered on Earth, and the working age of the Earth, based on all scientific observation and probability at this point, is about 3.5 billion years. The oldest rocks we have aged from the moon seem to be 4.5 billion years old, a full billion years older than the Earth. However, the oxygen isotope signatures of Earth and moon rocks are the same, which means they formed at a very similar distance from the sun. This would mean that the moon formed in the Earth's orbit a full billion years before the Earth itself, and somehow did not interfere with the formation of the Earth along the same or very similar orbit, and then somehow ended up in an orbit around the Earth instead of the sun, when it had been orbiting the sun for a billion years before the Earth came along.
So the old man on the moon is really a really old man.
Yeah, he's very old. But this makes absolutely no sense.
Nope.
No one has ever been able to explain it in scientific terms.
You just did.
Not in science.
As to why.
I'm asking the question. I haven't explained anything. I'm just asking questions, Moz. It is information like this that led Erwin Shapiro, a big name in astrophysics, who served as a professor at MIT and won the 2013 Einstein Award. Pretty impressive. He said, quote, "The best explanation for the moon is observational error. The moon does not exist," unquote.
That's Einstein Award winner.
It makes more sense that we're all hallucinating it than it actually exists as it does.
Nice.
So there you go. That's about as weird as it gets. And that was only number 3. You ready for number 4? It is also unique that we get perfect solar eclipses from our moon passing before the sun. No other moon that we have discovered would have the relational size, be at the right distance, and have the right orbital plane around its planet to create the celestial effect. Our moon is exactly 1/400th the size of our sun, and it is exactly 1/400th the distance of the sun from Earth. That's a little weird, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is what makes the sun and moon appear as the same sized objects in our sky, and allows for full solar eclipses to be seen from Earth. Isaac Asimov called this, quote, the most unlikely coincidence imaginable, unquote. And that guy had a serious imagination.
Oh, yeah.
He's a sci-fi writer,
Oh, yeah.
one of the most prolific ever, saying this is the most unlikely coincidence imaginable.
You know, it did strike me one time. I was reading recently a ritual, and I don't know where, I don't remember the tribe, I don't remember the book, but they held this ritual at the moment that the sun was setting in the west and the moon was rising in the east, and they mirrored each other. And I thought to myself, that is ridiculous, because they were talking about the size and the position, and everything was mirroring. And
yeah,
I
we'll
even
get into
thought
that
how
too.
odd that was, just from, like, why is that? No other planet seems to have that kind of...
Yeah, you're actually
weirdness.
jumping ahead to number 5. Let me finish number 4 real quick. The entire sun-earth-moon dynamic relationship is mind-bogglingly balanced, actually. For this much order to spring from the chaos of creation seems so unlikely that you have to wonder about the possibility of an intelligence behind it all. We can go on forever about the nature of this intelligence. People have been killing each other over the details for time out of mind now. But you know what they say, a good coincidence requires a lot of planning. And it seems that what or whoever put the sun-earth-moon dynamics together definitely had some kind of plan in mind. But I am digressing. Let's get on to what you were talking about with our next oddity about the moon. Number 5 is that it mirrors the sun in its seasonal movements, like what you were just talking about. On the equinoxes, which I'm imagining when those tribes were doing their thing, that's the first days of spring and fall, the moon and the sun will rise and set at the exact same spot on the horizon.
Yeah.
The exact same spot. They're mirroring each other, just like you said. On the solstices, however, the first days of winter and summer, the moon will set in the exact opposite position as the sun. That is to say, on the summer solstice, the moon will set where the sun sets in the winter solstice. And on the winter solstice, the moon will set where the sun sets on the summer solstice. Get it?
Yeah.
They move back and forth, and it's only in the equinoxes, when it's all in equilibrium, that they're in the same spot. And otherwise, they're left, right, mirroring each other.
Right.
And whenever the sun is at its highest and brightest, the moon will be at its lowest and weakest, and vice versa on that as well. So they're very mirror image. They're looking to be the same size. From your perspective on Earth, they're the same size in the sky, and they move exactly mirroring each other.
If you're going to create a yin-yang dualistic kind of model of dark and night, that's the perfect symbolism to have be the background for all this. It's also really nice that our ancestors used this opportunity of this mirror to build a pyramid and sacrifice people on top of it. I think that's really cool what they did with that. Yep.
It's right up there with throwing the virgins in the volcanoes, but we won't get to that till my Bat Squatch episode, which will be my next one. My next one will have that.
I'm pretty excited.
All right, so let's jump into number 6. Another type of odd occurrence that has been witnessed coming from the moon is what's known as transient lunar phenomenon.
Moon hobos. That's where you catch a train.
Transient lunar phenomenon. How the hell are those homeless guys staying alive on the moon?
I don't know. That's the train I've never jumped.
Yikes. But anywho, this is a little known phenomenon, but there are a huge number of reported observations. Let's go to Wiki for an explanation of this happening. You want to read this for us, Moz?
Yep. Reports of transient lunar phenomena range from foggy patches to permanent changes of the lunar landscape. Cameron, who we will discuss in a moment, classifies these as 1. Gaseous involving mists and other forms of obscuration. 2. Reddish colorations. 3. Green, blue, or violet colorations. 4. brightenings, and 5 darkenings. 2 extensive catalogs of transient lunar phenomena exist, with the most recent tallying 2,254 events going back to the 6th century. Of the most reliable of these events, at least 1/3 come from the vicinity of the Aristarchus Plateau. Aristarchus of Samos.
The Aristarchus Plateau, just so everyone knows, is a moon crater on the northwest part, relative to our viewing, of the visible side of the moon. It is the brightest large formation on the moon's surface, shining almost twice as bright as any other feature on the visible lunar surface. This seems to be the focal point for these transient lunar phenomenon.
You know, I think that Aristarchus got it named after him because his career really cratered later in life. We can take that out.
Oh, boy. Now, Wiki has a whole record of these recorded sightings that you can go check out if you're interested. It's far too much to cover here because, as it said, there's over 2,200 of them going back to the 6th century. But to follow up a bit on this for our purposes, we have here an excerpt from the opening of a scientific paper entitled, quote, Analyses of Lunar Transient Phenomena, Observations from 557 to 1994 AD, authored by Winifred S. Cameron of Sedona, Arizona. Look at that.
There you go.
Can I get some mad cujos for our neighbor Winifred in Sedona, please?
Down boy!
I'm
Thank
sorry.
you. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, Jeremy. I'm afraid I can't do that.
I just did, Hal. I just did.
I think you should take a stress tablet, Jeremy, and
I went all Bugs.
think about what you're
I went
doing.
all Bugs Bunny on you, and I stepped out and became the animator, Hal.
Wow.
I
And
am
hate
the
that.
animator now, Cal.
And you know how much I hate this part, this power you have. Anyway.
Anywho, now let's hear from Winifred Cameron's paper. It is totally our style, Moz. Let's have you read it.
Literature and received reports of lunar transient phenomenon, LTP, in lunar programs of observations provided a collection of 2,254 total observations from 557 to 1994 AD, with sufficient information for auxiliary data analysis. Among the 2,254, there were 645 that were independently confirmed and were permanently recorded in photographs, spectrophotometry, and polarimetry. In study of these reports, 448 were found that could not be explained by terrestrial atmospheric or instrumental effects, so are probably intrinsically lunar, which means a lot of the data isn't making sense. 500 of the 2,000 plus data points.
So if we extrapolate that, we're looking at essentially 20% of the phenomena having no readily available explanation.
Right.
Or any explanation some super smart scientists can figure out either. Like, they've been looking at this for a while, and they still don't know what the hell's going on with that.
Is an anomaly. I do remember I was reading a Deepak Chopra thing at one point. He uses the moon as part of his argument for why the universe is a holograph, and he points out a lot of these data anomalies and points out, that's his argument.
Yeah.
Holographic universe.
I feel like this is one of those things in science that the scientists just chose to ignore and not talk about because it's too weird and they can't explain it, so they just ignore it.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on. Dark matter. I mean, we're going to get an astrophysicist in our room, and we're gonna poke the bear a little bit. I think.
A little bit. All right, let's get to number 7 of our 8 here. The moon maintains the Earth's obliquity to the sun at 22.5 degrees of relative tilt. That's the Earth's tilt in relation to the sun. This is what gives us our seasons, maintains a temperature range that keeps most of our water liquid, and allows for life as we know it to exist on Earth, essentially. Without the moon being so well balanced in its sun-Earth relationship, our obliquity would vary widely and not allow for higher mammalian life to evolve, if any animal life at all, really. So simply put, no moon, no people.
Equals no moon people.
No moon people. People can't go to the moon if there's no moon and no people.
That's right.
Now, this balance of obliquity is being influenced by other things, and I guess I should say potentially, but really it's definitely happening. It is affecting global weather patterns. A number of influences, both natural, like the ocean floor shift that caused the Indonesian tsunami disaster back in 2004, Did you know, Moz, that event altered the Earth's obliquity by about 0.3 of a degree?
Yeah, that made the headline. I mean, I don't remember the specifics, but it threw off, but the headlines of the news the next day were like, this threw off the Earth's rotation.
Literally by 0.3 of a degree, the Earth tilted and
yeah,
changed global weather patterns. And I remember them saying, I remember a scientist on the news at that point when they were talking about it, saying this is going to change global weather patterns. We won't know how
effect,
or to what,
extent
level for at least a decade.
Mm-hmm.
Here we are almost 20 years later, and the weather's different, Moz.
Yeah.
But there's also human caused, like the effects we're seeing from the displacement of all the groundwater we're pumping everywhere. If you don't know what I'm talking about there, and you want to really ruin your happiness factor for the day, do a quick Google search for, quote, groundwater displacement earth shift, and see what pops up. I tested the wording, so I know it works. Groundwater displacement earth shift.
What if, and here's my Ahuguano theory, what if we all did the wave in the opposite direction, like everyone on the planet, and we could kind of reverse it by doing kind of like a stadium wave?
We have to put
globally.
everybody in the right piece of land, all billions of us in the same place as close together as possible.
Terrible. Yeah.
And then all at the same time jump.
Yeah. Jump. Okay. All right. Well, we could ask the astrophysicist that question.
We could. But this one actually really kind of freaks me out. With the whole,
it should, yeah. I mean,
the Earth is
groundwater
tilting
displacement
wrong,
shifts, the magnetic pole reversal. We seem to be tracking the North Pole. Seems to be tracking over Siberia in a way it hasn't.
Yeah,
and it's getting deeper and darker into some weirdness.
That number 7 really kind of freaks me out. But so let's move on to our final first point here, number 8. The moon, or more specifically the phasing of the moon, seems to have a direct effect on human behavior. Everyone's heard at least a little about this. We're going to get a little deeper. The following is the opening abstract from a paper entitled Human Aggression and the Lunar Synodic Cycle by A.L. Lieber in May 1978. So this is an older one. You want to read this one for us, Moz?
Data on 5 aggressive and or violent human behaviors were examined by computer to determine whether a relationship exists between the lunar synodic cycle and human aggression. Homicides, suicides, fatal traffic accidents, aggravated assaults, and psychiatric emergency room visits occurring in Dade County, Florida, all show lunar periodicities. Homicides and aggravated assaults demonstrate statistically significant clustering of cases around full moons. Psychiatric emergency room visits cluster around first quarter and shows a significantly decreased frequency around new and full moon. The suicide curve shows correlations with both aggravated assaults and fatal traffic accidents, suggesting a self-destructive component for each of these behaviors. The existence of a biological rhythm of human aggression, which resonates with the lunar synodic cycle, is postulated. Synodic, I guess. Synodic.
That's all right. They'll get it. But, so as you can see, and as we may have all experienced, and at least we've all kind of heard about, the full moon makes you crazy kind of stuff. There's science behind that.
Well, here's the thing.
The thing that they left out in my mind, though, is, also with the full moon comes that weird hair growing out of your forehead and your claws growing really fast.
That's different.
Or is that just me?
But the other piece of this is, working in hospital setting at different times. People who work in hospitals, what I always believed was this. People who worked in hospitals believed there was something to the lunar cycle, but that the data never really matched that. So you're saying there is data that matches.
According to this
peaks.
paper from 1978, that the data they collected actually showed some kind of significance.
Yeah.
I didn't dig much deeper. I didn't look at the peer reviews of the paper and stuff, but according to these guys, they wrote a whole thesis on it that's a thing.
If you talk to a bunch of nurses or folks at a crisis center, they will be saying there's something to it. I always thought that the data didn't support that, but that's interesting.
You know who else will verify that a lot of the time? Taxi drivers.
Yeah.
The weirdest nights I've ever had, and this sounds like a weird coincidence too, like non-relevant, but with what we do here, relevant. Full moons on a Wednesday. Mm-hmm. When I go out to drive my taxi / Uber, used to be a taxi, now it's an Uber, on a Wednesday night and there's a full moon, I'm like, oh boy, here we go. Because Wednesdays are the weirdest day of the week to begin with. I think it just has something to do with being right in the middle of the week. Only the weirdos are going out to begin with. And then when there's a full moon, oh boy, full moon Wednesdays, man.
Yeah. That's the Uber cyanotic cycle, I guess.
Yeah. But so that's my opening 8 weird points. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we move on here?
Nope. I think I'm following, like in a retrograde orbit, but I'm following.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's get to the heart of hollow moon theory here. So we have a lot of weirdness going on with the moon at this point, enough to wonder about its real story, which brings us to the essence of hollow moon theory. And the first question is, what first led to people believing specifically that the moon is hollow?
That was T.S. Eliot with the Hollow Man. You're a literary guy.
I'm a big fan of T.S. Eliot.
There you go.
Yeah, the love song of J. Alfred Prufrock is one of my favorite poems. I won't recite any of it for you here. I'll spare you, especially since I haven't done that in so long.
Just side trail it.
There's a few lines in my brain. But anywho, this theory really got going with the Apollo 12 mission, the second mission to send men to the moon. One of the objectives for Apollo 12 was to learn more about what was under the surface of the moon. At that point, we knew how oddly big yet light the moon was, and we had no idea why. We still don't know. NASA hoped their experiments with the Apollo 12 mission would help shed some light on that mystery. Instead, they just made the mystery all the more mysterious. As the Apollo 12 mission left the moon, they purposely dropped the landing module, which they did not need for the ride home, to let it crash into the surface of the moon, purposely. And the impact created a 30-foot wide crater. So pretty good impact. Why did they do this? Here is a NASA guy to tell us.
Scientists said, let's separate the lunar module and have it impact the moon just at the right distance away from this seismometer that they put there. And we'll measure how it vibrates. And that'll tell us what's going on in the center of the moon.
It was a well-planned experiment, but the resulting data astonished scientists. What did they find? Here's one of them to tell us.
Saw them on the seismic record. It was ringing like a bell. It just wouldn't stop.
Turns out the moon was resonating like a ringing bell after the impact of the landing module, not just for a minute, but for hours. Literally hours. It took over 3 hours for the moon to stop ringing from the impact of the Apollo 12 landing module. Over 3 hours, Maz.
Wow. That's how long the Gilligan's Island mission was supposed to take.
Yeah. There seemed to be no reasonable explanation for this, but there are always scientists that are willing to let the data guide them. And where did this data guide them?
Scientists who were willing to think outside the box said, hey, that's hollow. We have a hollow moon.
And mind blown.
Yeah.
It was the only rational hypothesis that matched the data. The moon was hollow.
Are you going to bring in the reptilians at some point? Because this is getting weird.
I've been instructed not to speak of the reptilians.
Good. Yeah, I'm with them.
Now, we're not necessarily talking completely hollow, but definitely huge amounts of empty space under the surface. It is the only way the readings...
But doesn't it seem almost metallic instead of just hollow? It really is more metallic.
I hadn't even gotten into that possibility, but yeah, I mean, when it's ringing like that...
Yeah, hours.
Would rock even... Well, it's really more if you have the empty space in the middle where the stuff...
Or is it bouncing off
Yeah,
of
really
each
just
other?
kind of
Gotcha.
just a hollow thing. But it's the only way the readings from the seismometers make sense.
Mm-hmm.
We have an essentially hollow moon. It's the only way it makes sense.
If it is the Death Star and we it turns into operational if we keep poking at it,
Yeah.
that would be bad as
Yeah.
well.
Like,
Or what if the old ones are there?
and dude, why haven't we gone back in so long?
Yeah, there's so many anomalies. It's because I think it's because when they took all the samples, there was no gold in them, their hills.
Yeah, that's really it too, huh? It's the mining possibilities is all that all the people really care about. that are in charge of this stuff because they want to make money off.
But there are planned missions. A couple of countries are planning to get there. Right?
I believe I get into that later. We're going to skip that. But yeah, the whole NASA SpaceX coordinated mission to the moon that's been pushed back. But we're going to get into that later. Let's keep moving here. So back to the ringing moon. Some will say there was something wrong with the seismometers. Got to give the skeptics their due sometimes. That the data was somehow faulty or anomalous, and that the whole thing was just a big misunderstanding. You can believe that if you like, but the seismometers left on the moon have been used in countless experiments and data gathering since then without any problems or anomalies in the data, indicating that the data collected from the Apollo 12 landing module was accurate. So suck it, skeptics. Also, it should be noted, on the operations sheet for all following moon missions in the Apollo program, there was listed an operation with the name Chapel Bell, the details of which were classified by the DoD and remain classified to this day over 50 years later.
So you think this
I
is where
tried
they...
to find it, Moz. They do not tell people what Chapel Bell is, but it was on every single mission after that returning to the moon.
Mm-hmm. And this is where you think the hollow moon theory is hidden.
I mean, it's a bit odd they named it Chapel Bell, don't you think?
Oh,
and that it's still classified 50 years later. People are putting in FOIA requests. They're not responding. Like, this is covered up as much as anything's ever been covered. So now, okay, the moon is hollow. Is that really a big deal?
Yeah.
Actually, it is, yeah. And here's why.
So if the moon were hollow, what would that mean? Well, obviously it's not a naturally occurring phenomenon, so it's got to be artificial. Somebody put it there. Someone built it.
Uh-oh, Moz. There it is. Nature doesn't make sails, as Avi Loeb said, and nature also doesn't make hollow moons.
I guess you can't say the plot thickens. The plot actually thins.
Yeah. So if what we have witnessed personally with our own sensors and senses is true, the moon is at least a good part hollow. And if this is so, the moon is more than likely not a naturally occurring object, but is in fact an artificially constructed object. And where does the problem lie with that possibility?
Yeah.
The idea that the moon could be an artificial space station, how difficult it is just to get our space station up. Can you imagine putting something the size of the moon in orbit? I don't think so. It has a bigger story.
It does have a bigger story, but we know that story now, don't we, Moz?
The moon was flown here.
It's what our whole previous 4-part deep dive on alien probes culminated with, remember?
Douglas Adams.
This episode is actually the official final Hulguano theory for that 4-part probe series, and this is why. For those who took that 4-part probes tour, you will now see the possibility that the moon is an artificial alien outpost constructed by self-replicating von Neumann space probes that came to our star system and built the moon out of locally sourced materials. Huh? Moz?
Yeah,
This obviously would have been done millions and millions of years ago, about 4.5 billion, according to the stats, which is the only way to explain the crater history ever evident on the moon's surface. It had to have been there that long to get all the pockmarks.
Right.
It's a crazy theory when put that way, but no matter how you slice it, the implications of all this data are profound and wide-sweeping. Now let's get into the really deep parts here. That was just the beginning. Throughout its history, the moon has played a big part in the Earth's environmental makeup. The moon is responsible for plate tectonics on Earth, which allowed life to evolve. The moon was initially much closer to the Earth, creating the conditions to create life. The tidal planes, when the moon was much nearer the Earth, were ridiculously extreme, due both to the moon's nearer gravity well and to the Earth spinning at a much faster rate because of the nearness of the moon, extending literally hundreds of miles from high to low tide lines. Just the water was just sloshing over everything, you know. This massive sloshing effect helped break down the minerals of the rocky surface and churned them all together into the proverbial primordial soup from which life is thought to have sprung. And as it moved away, it caused the waters to calm, the continents to shift, the spin to regulate into proper seasons for life to begin to evolve.
It was churning the cauldron, basically.
It's like an incubator.
Yeah.
And though the moon is still moving away from the Earth, it is at a minuscule rate. By the time it is far enough from Earth to stop supporting animal life, the sun will have already exploded, engulfing anything that's left in the solar system. Hopefully we can figure out how to turn the Earth back into an intergalactic spaceship by then. So the moon's celestial, life-giving embrace with the Earth will last longer than the sun itself. If that's not a romantic notion, I ain't never heard one, Moz.
But it's breaking up with us, though, gradually. It's just starting to take out like one Dylan CD at a time.
Not until everything's dead already anyway.
Oh, so it's just
till the end of time.
Is it going to go find another home and orbit somewhere else?
Well, if we take off, we're going to have to bring it with us.
What if it's been set billions of years ago that when it does break away, it's going to go to another Class M planet and circle that?
Ooh.
Yeah. Nice.
That's your Alhuguano theory right there. You should get more into that later.
There we go.
But and just a side note here, I mentioned the Earth is a spaceship thing from our earlier UAP thought experiment right there. And there's one other thing that ties that in here. As far as we can tell, the Earth's rotational speed has been very slowly slowing for untold millennia, like since back in the day, you know. But somehow, suddenly, in 1999, the slowing stopped. The Earth's spin was suddenly holding steady. Oh. But Maz, do you think this ties in with my theory of the Tic-Tac craft being able to influence the Earth's movements?
Yeah, and all those anomalous crafts we see in the moon's surface all the time.
Yeah, like maybe they're purposefully altering that. Or this could be due to the changing obliquity we talked about also.
Which is
where the Earth's tilt changed a little bit, will that change its rotational speed? So, you know, there's a lot of different angles you might be able to come up with. To look at that here, I'm not enough of a scientist to know which ones really apply.
But should we panic yet?
That was what I was going to ask. Does that mean it is? Is it time to panic? One of these days I'm going to start screaming and run out of the studio never to be seen again.
Jeremy, you should take your stress pill and lie down and think about what you're doing.
Okay.
Just wanted to howl you one more time.
Oh, right. I'm going to blow you out the airlock, man. Anywho, let's get back to the moon here. There also seems to be a serious connection between the moon and human measuring systems throughout time. It is an obvious thing that the earliest known calendars were lunar calendars charting the passage of days, months, and seasons based on the phases of the moon, which are another anomalous feature, by the way, and the rising and setting points of the moon. What isn't so obvious is the way our measuring systems from the earliest known prehistoric measuring systems that were already ancient when they were used to build the pyramids, to the meter and the mile, they all seem to inherently align with the dynamics of the Moon-Earth-Sun system. And there is reason to believe that ancient, what we would call prehistoric humans actually knew the size of the moon. How would that be? This is actually a whole nother can of worms. So it's actually going to be the topic for our side trail this week. That will be released early for members in our Patreon member section at patreon.com/monsterloretour. You can join for as little as $1 a month. Otherwise, you'll have to wait for the next side trail compilation episode to release. It's gonna go deep. The side trail is gonna be weird. But let's stick with the moon for now, and let's move on to mascons. Did you know there are multiple mascons on the moon, Moz? Do you know what a mascon is, Moz?
Yeah, I think they were the bad guys from episode 27 Star Trek.
Yeah, before the crime, you got to put your mask on.
There you go. Mask on, mask off.
Well, no, that's not it at all. Let me tell you what it is. Collins English Dictionary defines it as, quote, a local concentration of very dense material beneath the surface of the moon, unquote. Simply put, mascons stand for mass concentration. These mascons cause strange fluctuations in the moon's gravity field. These gravity anomalies, there's that word again, anomalies, caused problems for the Apollo missions. Here is a passage from fossilhunter.xyz's article titled Mascons, a Lumpy Moon, from September 2011. I'm going to have you read this, Moz.
That should have gotten Mad Cujos for a lumpy moon theory.
The lumpy moon theory.
I like it. Mascons complicated the mission planning process for Apollo through their profound effects on lunar orbits. Since they are largely on the near side, they accelerate spacecraft slightly when compared to the far side. Over a remarkably short time, and owing to some help from perturbations due to Earth's gravity, orbits are modified by being lowered on the near side and raised on the far side until, if no intervention occurs, they cause the spacecraft to impact the lunar surface. As later high-precision gravity maps of the moon would reveal, Apollos 15 and 17 happened to fly over two of the most intense mascons, those associated with Mare Serenitatis and Mare Imbrium.
Scientists have been studying these gravity-affecting mascons. A research team called GRAIL, Gravity Recovery and Interior Laboratory, led the research on this. One of their members, Jay Maloche, told phys.org, quote, "In 1968, these mass concentrations were an unwelcome discovery as scientists prepared for the Apollo landings, and they have remained a mystery ever since. In 1968, these mass concentrations were an unwelcome discovery as scientists prepared for the Apollo landings, and they have remained a mystery ever since. GRAIL has now mapped where they lay, and we have a much better understanding of how they developed. If we return to the moon, we can now navigate with great precision." Unquote. I just had a thought. This is real time. You ready, Moz? So we're talking about the moon being artificial, right? Mm-hmm. And it's got these mascons where if you try to put, say, an observational satellite in orbit to see what's going on the moon, after a certain number of rotations, it's going to crash.
Because it speeds up.
It sounds like a defense mechanism to me, in a way.
So you can't have an orbit around the orbit.
Yeah, like if you send something over there to try to orbit it and observe it, it's just going to suck it in and crash it.
Wow. No one else says that. It's a Jeremy original.
That just came into my brain. I wrote this whole thing, and it wasn't until I'm going back and rereading it that I just realized that theory.
Yeah. It's like when you ended an episode, like eating the sandwich before we actually recorded that time. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what you do.
Yeah.
Impressed. Or frightened.
Put that one on the list of potentials for this one.
Yeah.
But as another aside that I actually do have in my notes, I would like to talk for a moment about the delay of the moon mission, because we were just talking about why haven't we gone back, right? We are planning to go back to the moon. When I say we, I'm talking about the U.S. in 2025. But an article from spaceflightnow.com reports in its headline that, quote, NASA concerned SpaceX's Starship schedule could delay moon landing, unquote. Essentially, the litany of problems they are having with the SpaceX Falcon Heavy rocket, most notably that they haven't even proven that it can get into orbit, has been a major concern for NASA. So the next long-awaited moon landing that would put people on the moon again for the first time in 50 years was originally scheduled for Christmas of 2023, will more than likely be pushed back indefinitely. Right now it's set for 2025. It's probably going to get set back indefinitely until they can figure out how to get it done. It blows my mind that we did this in the 60s and 70s, but somehow can't figure out how to do it again. Like, what are your thoughts on that, Moz?
Do you think our Christmas special may have been part of the delay? That was used to 23.
23?
Yeah. So
it's already been pushed. They pushed it back almost 2 years already, and now they're talking like we're not sure it's even going to happen.
If it is because of our Christmas special, I apologize to NASA and to Mr. Musk, our new overlord.
Like, is this just a typical America thing where it's like they don't want to actually do it unless somebody's going to make money off it, and that's what they can't figure out?
Yeah.
Because we have the science, we have the craft, we've put people on the moon before.
And it's so
interesting.
interesting.
And I hate to say it because I am not one of these guys, but this is where you start going, did we put people on the moon before?
That's another episode.
I am not into that conspiracy theory, but stuff like this makes me understand why some people are.
Yeah.
Like, I see why people doubt that sometimes when you see the way things have gone since then.
Yeah. Badly. But there's so
Badly,
much.
yeah.
There's so much anomalies that you'd think there'd be a little bit more interest in.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's like they ignore it. Like they just don't want to face the fact that they can't understand their own moon. These, you know what I mean? It's kind of crazy.
According to the BBC, we were supposed to have Moonbase Alpha in space 1999, and that means we're way behind that project.
Yeah. Well, whoever's running the moon won't let us come back, maybe. You know what I'm thinking. But anywho, let's get back to these gravity anomaly causing mascons for a minute. They're attributing these mascons to massive asteroid impacts on the moon, creating dense concentrations of mass under the lunar surface, mostly at the bottom of large craters, which could make sense, but nothing is proven about their creation. So, this being MLT, I have to ask, what if there is another reason for the gravity anomalies? Have you read 2001, Moz?
A long time ago.
It's a great book. I actually read it again recently while I was writing this episode. It's nice and short, easy to read, but it's so profound in its way. It's a great afternoon of reading that book. But do you remember how we discovered the existence of higher life in that story?
The monolith.
Yeah, the big monolith on the moon.
Right.
Buried at the bottom of one of these massive craters, much like where we find these mascons. Now, in the book, it was an electromagnetic effect that alerted us to the monolith's existence.
This is gravity.
Yeah, but what if there is a real-life version of this that affects gravity rather than electromagnetics? Because those are the two things you put together to make this whole space travel thing work, if you remember our UAP, our Dream of Fields episode.
Yep.
So what do you think, Moz? Could these mascons be a message left for us by a more advanced alien culture that built the moon, and this is the real-life version of what the monoliths were in the 2001 story?
Or it's the defense, like you said, of the orbiting, blocking anything that might orbit.
That's my other new theory. So there's definitely reasons that these could have been done. I should mention there's actually at least one mascon on Earth.
Whoa.
I saw this. I didn't put this in my notes. I should have put this in my notes.
New Zealand has a lake that has an odd electromagnetic.
I believe it was in the Indian Ocean. But there's actually a mascon on Earth that it's not nearly as drastic, I don't think, as the effect you get from the ones on the moon.
But it's a heavy gravity
But
area.
it actually does affect orbits. If you send a satellite over
directly
that
over
spot, you're going to have to adjust its orbit to keep it in line, or else it's going to start dropping a little bit every time it goes over it.
Dang.
So they're not totally anomalous to the moon, like a lot of these other things we're talking about, these mascons. There's just a real concentration of them. Like it's odd that it has.
Well, that's what gravity is.
As much of it as
heavier
it does.
Concentration.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Had to concentrate on that.
But anywho, so we are approaching the weirdest part of the episode, our Ahul Guano theory, which in this case will be the Ahul Guano theory, as this entire episode is actually just an overgrown Ahul Guano theory. It's, a folded up batshit tesseract.
Tesseract, yeah.
It's basically what we're dealing with here. But before we get
to the moon could be bigger on the end, yeah.
Oh, what if the moon's a tesseract?
It's going to be a TARDIS. Yeah. You didn't come up with that yourself?
You just broke my brain, Moz.
But I thought that was where we were probably going.
See, this is why I need you for the other half of my brain, because you have the half that came up with that.
Well, it's the bigger half. It's bigger in the inside of my brain. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
What if Moz is a tesseract? No, I'm getting a little... But seriously, the moon, the cube inside the sphere thing that we were talking about with the alien craft and the potentially tesseractian craft.
Yeah.
What if there's a cube inside the moon? Big hollow hypercube. Oh. I'm like shocked. I don't know if I can continue, Moz.
The
you
moon
just
could
broke
be
my brain.
the size of Jupiter in there.
Let me see if I can get back on track here with the stroke Moz just gave me.
So don't fly directly over a mascon. You'll be fine.
There you go. So before I get to the official Ahul Guano theory of the week, first let me give you a runner-up theory, okay? Could it be, Moz, that the moon is an ancient alien terraforming station that shaped the Earth into the life-friendly zone that we know it to be, that brought about the conditions under which we were allowed to be. Are the aliens still there watching us? Is that why we have so many UFO sightings in the world? Or are the builders long since gone, having left or died off millennia ago, considering the thing was built 4.5 billion years ago, long before we reached the point where meaningful contact between our species would be possible? Mm-hmm. Was it our species that made it all happen to begin with? Is this part of the reason we haven't been to the moon again in so long after so many trips in our first decade of space exploration? As with Oumuamua, the theory sounds outrageous, but the data only leaves us so many options.
Is this moonspermia theory?
Kind of moonspermia, like the moon was purposefully built and put there around the Earth in order to create this.
No,
life.
I know.
Like
it makes the tides. Like everything you
done.
said is about the water sloshing, the cauldron, the tides.
Yeah.
Obliquity, the seasons.
And the fact, when the moon was closer like that, as it was helping to create the life that would evolve into what we know now as life, you didn't get, it was closer to the Earth. The Earth was spinning faster. You didn't have the sun and the moon being the same size in the sky. You didn't have them mirroring each other on the horizon for their rises and sets and all that. The moon only got to that position where that was happening right about the time that Homo sapiens evolved.
Wow.
It's like the timing of it, like the fact that we are here now just plays into the whole thing. It really does, because right now is when the messages are coming across with these mathematical relationships and things. The 1/400th distance, the 1/400th size, and all the other weird maths that go into this. There'll be links for that later in the side trail and whatnot. But it just keeps feeding into, this can't be an accident. Mm-hmm. It seems so purposeful in so many ways. Like, I know this is going down a rabbit hole, but it's hard to not start buying into this a little bit when you really start going into it.
You know what happens when you go down the rabbit hole deep enough?
What's that?
Just kind of a bell sound.
You come out the other side.
Resonates. No, it just...
Ooh, it just rings.
For hours, yeah.
Because you just fell into the Tesseract in the middle of the moon, and it's ringing like a bell because the humans just threw something at it.
Yes.
Like
the
a
ladder. We
like
can
a
throw
monkey
a ladder
throwing a
down
rock.
there the next time.
Like a monkey throwing a rock.
Next mission, the landing gear has to just drop over on one of those mascons, see what happens.
Ooh, there you go. I wonder if they could land something there. The gravity's all weird and stuff. They obviously have a hard enough time landing stuff there to begin with. I wonder if they could actually pull that off, land something there and do their tests and whatnot.
That'd be fun.
That'd be cool, yeah. But anywho, that brings us to the official Ahu Guano theory of the week. Oh no, here it comes! Quick, to the batshit signal!
So we had 17 pre-Ahu theories today.
This whole, like I said, this whole episode is just a 4D hypercube of batshit folded in on itself. Yeah. The whole thing's the Ahu Guano theory from a previous series, All right, you ready for this?
Yepper.
The universe is all God's dream. The so-called Big Bang was the neural synapse firing to create the dreamscape. As far as we can tell, the observable universe is currently around 3.8 trillion years old. And in approximately 100 trillion more years, it seems the universe will expire into nothingness. Now you're thinking that seems an awful long time to be in a dream, but that timescape is from our point of view. Have you ever fallen asleep and had a dream that seemed to go on for hours, but upon waking you find you were only asleep for a few minutes? I know I have. How about you, Moth?
Time is relative in the dreamscape.
Yeah. Now picture an infinite, immortal, or very near immortal being that exists outside of what we know as time. How long would one of their dreams last from our frame of reference? How long would that dream seem to last to the characters in the dream?
So you're talking Cthulhu?
I'm saying we are all just God's dream.
Yeah, but what if God's dream is, what if Cthulhu is God?
Why do you got to ruin it by bringing Cthulhu up, man? I was trying to be all philosophical and
All
like
right, sorry.
there was a beauty in that, and you go straight to Cthulhu?
Cthulhu's beautiful.
If you love pain.
I've been instructed to say Cthulhu is beauty.
I have been instructed not to mention our reptilian masters.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. Did I say something there?
That's so season 2.
Yikes. So what the hell does this all have to do with all this moon stuff? Here's the culminating ahuli point. The moon is a wholly anomalous but necessary mechanism in the cosmic clockworks that created all life as we know it on Earth. But it wasn't just the moon. There are far more seemingly anomalous things about our solar system beyond the moon. I'm going to ask Mr. Moz Sagan to read an excerpt from my primary source for this episode, Who Built the Moon, by Christopher Knight and Alan Butler. Great book to pick up and check out if you're interested in the stuff we're talking about in this episode, and especially all the stuff I'm skipping over with the maths and whatnot. But Mr. Moz Sagan, could you read this for us, please?
Can I read it in Neil deGrasse Tyson voice?
Oh, you do you have one? I know you can do Sagan.
I'm just going to do Sagan.
I can't imagine you do it.
You were supposed to, be annoyed by that, but you weren't. You went with it. You called my bluff.
Fair enough.
The solar system of which the Earth forms a small part is only one of many, even our own corner of our galaxy. The Milky Way astronomers have identified stars that definitely have planets orbiting them, so the state of affairs within our own solar system is certainly not unique. An interesting finding has been the larger gaseous planets in other star systems, much like Jupiter and Saturn and our own, have been discovered to have an orbit that is always very close to their host star. From these early indications, it seems that our planetary arrangement is unique, which just might not be accidental. It is a fact that if Jupiter were not just over 5 times more distant from the Sun than we are, advanced life on Earth would not exist. This giant planet is positioned as a catcher of space objects that would otherwise impact into Earth. A dramatic example of this was seen on July 1994, when 21 fragments of the comet Shoemaker-Levy 9 smashed into Jupiter at speeds of up to 500,000 kilometers an hour, or approximately 310,000 miles per hour, creating fireballs larger than the planet Earth itself.
Ooh, thank you again, Moz Sagan. So it was not just the moon that was responsible for the evolution of sentient life on Earth. It was the other planets, the sun, the very particular dynamics of the Big Bang itself, information of the elements, and even the most basic universal laws of physics.
So they had to design the whole solar system for us to be here.
Yeah, if the fundamental physical laws that govern our universe were different by 1% of 1% of 1% of 1% of 1% of what they are, that is a very small number. Lots of zeros after the decimal point right there. None of this, or us, or anything we know to exist would have ever come to be. But it did come to be because we are Moz. But our being here is so astoundingly unlikely that it really doesn't make sense. But you know what else doesn't make sense?
The fjords.
Dreams.
Yeah.
We're in God's dream, Moz.
Maybe.
Put that in your pipe and smoke it.
What if Slarta Bartfast actually...
Slotty Bartfast!
if he did the fjords differently, would that have affected the outcomes
yes.
as well?
Yes. Because one less mastodon would have fallen off and the whole evolution of time would have changed.
And then Homer couldn't have gone back into time and stepped on everything on purpose.
Correct.
Yeah. It all begins to make sense.
Yeah.
It's pretty Ahuguani theory, but I like it.
But anywho... what I'm getting at here is not only is the moon anomalous and seemingly impossible, so is the whole damn total of creation, if you look at it right. It's enough to drive you completely ahul guano if you think about it too much, which I now definitely have, Moz. I've definitely thought about this too much. Welcome to my madness, everybody. I just have one question for you before we move on. What if God wakes up early?
And he's really grumpy. And he's out of coffee.
Yeah, like what if his cat jumps on his face while he's sleeping? You know?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it just turns off like a switch.
Yeah. Poof.
And it's like we were never even here.
Yeah. I do believe, and back to that Deepak Chopra thing, it does tie into that holographic why. The argument for why this is a hologram rather than...
It goes back to that quote I did earlier in the episode, that the most likely reason for the moon is observational error, that it's not really there.
Yeah.
Holographic would explain that. Those two things mash up.
Yeah. Projected hologram.
Yeah.
From deep within Maz's deep mind.
When you really want to get into it, a lot of philosophy will talk about how everything is just really a hologram. Like our physical observable reality is just a rationalization of our conscious that puts it in a framework we can deal with.
Yeah.
That none of it's actually what it looks like to begin with.
But what if I can't deal with it? Then it's not working.
Well, that's when the filter starts breaking down.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You got to change the coffee filter.
Yeah, you got to clean your filters once in a while. That's what meditation's for.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good tie-in.
Cleans your filters. But anywho, do you have, that's my Yahoo Guano theory. You got any other theories you want to get into on the weird side before we get into the skeptic's review here, Moss?
I think I've done some pre-Guanos throughout. I think I'm good.
Yeah, threw a couple in there as we went. That was pretty good. All right, so let's get to the other side of the coin with Sir Richard Scully Muggle's skeptic's review.
You're full of crap, and that's the nicest thing that I can say.
This is going to be a rather extensive skeptic's review for this one. It is Hollow Moon theory after all. We will see, however, that some of their arguments aren't as strong as you may expect, and other arguments, if they hold true, would actually just raise another set of questions. So let's get into it. The main theory for the formation of the moon is what's called the Big Whack theory. This theory is that the Earth impacted with a planetary body about the size of Mars some billions of years ago. And the debris released by the resulting impact coalesced in orbit around the Earth to form the moon. Most scientists who work in this particular field will stand by this theory as if it were proven fact. But the real fact is that it is totally conjecture, and there is no physical proof at all that the Big Whack theory ever happened. But instead of me rambling on about it, I would like to present an article published by BBC.com on June 5th, 2014, titled Traces of Another World Found on the Moon.
My favorite soap opera.
Ooh. Maybe this will show you
Traces of Another World.
Maybe this will show you a bit what I'm talking about here. You want to do the honors on this one, Moss?
Researchers have found evidence of the world that crashed into the Earth billions of years. This would have been a better second one. Billions and billions of years ago. Researchers have found evidence that the world that crashed into the Earth billions of years ago to form the moon. Analysis of lunar rock brought back by Apollo astronauts shows traces of the planet called Theia. The researchers claim that their discovery confirms the theory that the moon was created by just such a cataclysmic collision. The accepted theory since the 1980s is that the moon arose as a result of a collision between the Earth and Theia 4.5 billion years ago. Theia was named after a goddess in Greek mythology who was said to be the mother of Selene, goddess of the moon. It is thought to have disintegrated on impact, with the resulting debris mingling with that from Earth and coalescing into the moon. It is the simplest explanation, and it fits in well with computer simulations. The main drawback with the theory is that no one had found any evidence of Theia in lunar rock samples. Earlier analysis had shown moon rock to have originated entirely from the Earth, whereas computer simulation had shown that the moon ought to have been mostly derived from Theia. So you're talking about available, these von Neumann probes using available material that would lend itself to this theory a little bit, except the billion-year difference between the moon and the Earth rock. Just at this.
Correct. That would be a whole nother conversation. But what we're doing right now, so you can see here that this Big Whack theory isn't as solid as it's cracked up to be. In fact, it's full of holes. See what I did there?
I see.
They're stating things here including in the headline that they are dealing with solid facts, but when you read it, you find other scientists raising serious questions about the veracity of the hypothesis, as we will see continuing with the article, Moz.
Now, a more refined analysis of moon rock has found evidence of material thought to have an alien origin. According to lead researcher Dr. Daniel Harwartz from the University of Göttingen, no one has found definitive evidence for the collision theory until now. It was getting to the stage where some people were suggesting that the collision had not taken place, he told BBC News. But we have now discovered small differences between the Earth and the Moon. This confirms the giant impact hypothesis. But the difference, some say, could be explained by material absorbed by the Earth after the Moon formed. And Professor Alex Halliday of Oxford University is among many scientists who are surprised that the difference between the Thean material found in the moon rock and the Earth is so small. What you are looking for is much bigger difference, because that is what the rest of the solar system looks like based on meteorite measurements, he said. Dr. Hurwitz measured the difference in what is called the isotopic composition of the oxygen contained in rocks on Earth and moon rock. This is the ratio of different forms of oxygen. Studies of meteorites from Mars and the outer solar system show that these ratios are markedly different, rather like a fingerprint. So Professor Halliday and others are puzzled by the fact that the fingerprints of Earth and Theia seem almost identical.
So the skeptics here are trying to state as fact a theory for which there stands no real acceptable evidence. Not that there is any real acceptable evidence for the artificial hollow moon hypothesis either, but we just need to realize that in the end, no one actually knows what caused the moon to be what it is, or how it got there in the first place. Don't let anyone sell you a truth based on their own biases, is what I'm getting at.
Well, I remember that was the theory we learned in school. That was formed by a collision.
Right. Doesn't hold true. Doesn't hold up to scrutiny. So that didn't directly debunk us here. So what else do the skeptics have to go with? Well, in January 2011, NASA released some findings that seemed to blow a hole in the hollow moon theory. This is an article from nasa.gov dated January 19th, 2011, titled NASA Chat, The Moon's Earth-like Core. And I'm going to read this one for you. Give Maz a break. State-of-the-art seismological techniques applied to Apollo-era data suggest our moon has a core similar to Earth's. Uncovering details about the lunar core is critical for developing accurate models of the moon's formation. The data sheds light on the evolution of a lunar dynamo, a natural process by which our moon may have generated and maintained its own strong magnetic field. The team's findings suggest the moon possesses a solid, iron-rich inner core with a radius of nearly 150 miles and a fluid, primarily liquid iron outer core with a radius of roughly 205 miles. Where it differs from Earth is a partially molten boundary layer around the core estimated to have a radius of nearly 300 miles. The research indicates the core contains a small percentage of light elements such as sulfur, echoing a new seismology research on Earth that suggests the presence of light elements such as sulfur and oxygen in a layer around our own core. The researchers used extensive data gathered during the Apollo-era moon missions. The Apollo Passive Seismic Experiment consisted of 4 seismometers deployed between 1969 and 1972, which recorded continuous lunar seismic activity until late 1977. Same seismometers that got the ringing bell thing, by the way.
Nice.
So not anomalous. So if the moon has a solid Earth-like core, it obviously can't be hollow, right? I mean, that's just basic sense.
Mm-hmm.
But if the moon has a solid Earth-like core, how do you account for all those strange but fully proven characteristics of the moon, like how it rang like a bell when it impacted, or how it is 27% the size of the Earth, but only a little over 1% of the mass?
That's crazy. Yeah.
How can it have that core if it's that light? It doesn't make sense.
It could really be a good mascot for some kind of weight program. I'm just saying. I would think that way. if I were a
Oh
marketer.
my goodness, Weight Watchers on the moon.
Yeah.
Oh man. But if it was, if it has a heavy element core like the Earth, then wouldn't it have to be otherwise hollow to account for the lack of mass?
Yeah.
And if it were otherwise hollow, how could it contain such a heavy core with nothing around it to keep it stable?
There's a big space in it.
Like the more I think
and no
about it,
core.
the less
Core.
it makes sense.
And crust and core and nothing in between.
Yeah, like if the moon has a solid core like the Earth, that actually leaves me more confused than ever in light of all the other facts that we've gone through. And these are real facts. This is real stuff. It seems that the more you try to understand it, the less understandable it gets. You know, Maz? Like
I find that with most of your episodes. No, I'm kidding.
It's kind of my whole life.
I'm kidding. No, I do understand
I've
some
always-
things better.
I've always said you can't make a movie of my life because no one would believe
it.
any of it.
No, I'm a small part of it, and it's
It doesn't
staggeringly
make
confusing.
sense.
Yeah,
I don't even know how I pull it off.
you do it with 16 breaks before we start.
Yeah.
Good times.
Okay, anywho, so now that I've gotten myself as thoroughly confused on my own topic as possible, let's go on to our next segment, the Scully-Mulder Believability Scale.
They feel your methods, your theories are
Spooky? Do you think I'm spooky?
like, why am I Scully? I do not believe in that scale.
But it believes in you, Maz.
Mm-hmm.
You actually created it, you know. Like,
Yeah,
you're the
well,
one who
all
came
the-
up with the name. You created the scale, and now you don't want the scale anymore.
Yeah.
So to get into the believability side for it for me, I'll get us rolling then, since you don't want to take part, really. This whole thing is a philosophical conundrum for me. After going through all this research and write-up and analysis, it just leaves me in a conundrum, like confusion. Do I think the moon is an ancient alien base? No, I don't really, honestly. I love thinking about it. I love the theories, the philosophy. I don't actually really believe that. The straight up on its face hollow moon theory, I'm going to give it 2. I just don't buy it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not because it's too weird or wild, but because it doesn't seem weird enough to be true. This is a case of Haldane's law put forth by geneticist J.P.S. Haldane, who said, quote, "My own suspicion is that the universe is not only queerer than we suppose, but queerer than we can suppose."
Dun, dun, dun.
Thank you, Maz. But yeah, I don't think we have the mental, imaginative, or creative capacity to even begin to guess what the real story is behind the moon. And no matter how weird your theories might get, they're probably still far from weird enough to actually be true.
We haven't even gone behind the moon yet.
Yeah. Do I believe that the moon is utterly anomalous and just doesn't make any logical sense? Yes, I do.
Mm-hmm.
Give that a 10 all the way. Do I have any idea whatsoever of what caused the moon to be, which in turn caused all earthly life as we know it, including ourselves, to be? No, I don't. I think we are scared animals scrambling around in the dark looking for answers right now.
Yeah.
I mean, metaphorically speaking, but a little bit of panic in the darkness, Maz, is what's going on. If forced to say what I think this all means, it seems like a proof of an intelligent designer of the universe that is acting with knowledge and intent on a level that our species will never be able to comprehend. It almost seems to prove God exists. Whatever you want to call God, whatever you want to see it as, it to me starts proving there is some kind of intelligent design behind all this.
Well, you know, philosophy broke down after Kant's critique on pure reason, and now really physics is breaking. I mean, we're going to talk to an astrophysicist
really,
soon, but
yeah.
it seems to be with dark matter and the James Webb Telescope and all our keep having to come up with new theories to make sense of what the heck we're seeing. It's really odd
I have
to me.
Just very early beginnings of research for an episode with the working title Broken Universe
Yeah.
that I might be doing in season 2.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to get every time I see something that pertains, and I have the weirdest news feed ever, I'll bookmark the things that, the universe is broken.
You were going to
Great.
use Break Like the Wind, but that was taken. Yeah.
By my butt.
No, it's by Spinal Tap.
Oh, excuse
By
me.
their butt. Yeah.
Right. Either that, or it proves that we may well be the only conscious, cognizant, intelligent life in the universe, as the Moon, Earth, Sun system is so outrageously anomalous, and therefore, so are we, since that system was essential for our coming into existence. And unless we can find another system with the same ratios and balances, which we have yet to do, then we may be the only ones out there listening. That is a bleak and desolate road to go down, Moz. I'd prefer it if it was proving God exists. But that is not for us lowly thinking meatbags to decide at this point, I guess.
There you go. It's getting deep.
Now I'm sad. I made myself sad with my believability scale. It's not supposed to happen.
Yeah.
I don't know. Reel me in here, Moz. Am I out of line with this whole God existing thing and us being the only ones? I mean, does this lead you down any other roads that I haven't gone down yet?
You are the philosopher, and I have to say, like I said, I came across some of the anomalies of the universe, but when you just look at the moons, it does make you question things a little bit, again, about what BWTF, I guess. Yeah. I think someone said that best.
Oh, and I fell so far into my own malaise, I forgot to get your side of that. What's your believability scale on all this, Moz? I went from a 2 of it being the hollow alien base to a 10 of it being super weird and anomalous, so I don't even know where I lie, honestly.
I think I was a 1 for Hollow Moon, and maybe I'm a 3 now, just because, especially because of the dropping of the landing gear, the bell sound. If there's a hollow component to the moon, that obviously could be explained by other things,
right? But
it moves the needle a little bit, and again, just going through all the anomalies of it that you hear about, but when you kind of list them all, it doesn't make a ton of sense.
Yeah, and I guess that's what my takeaway from doing this episode was. I still don't at all think that it's some, full-on alien base or anything like that, but those were facts that we just went through.
Make no sense.
Like, outside of the ones we said are specifically our theories, all that was fact. It makes no sense. Like, you can't deny that the moon doesn't make sense.
We got to find that Chapel Bell paperwork that's missing. And
honestly, I think that's where, I think if we were able to actually get that information out of them, it would help us a lot in this case. But I know for a fact there's been FOIA requests for it and stuff, and that's not something that I think they're putting out.
Yep.
That's like the most top secret stuff. Some of the most top secret stuff they have. And why? Yeah. Why, Moz? Like, this episode kind of broke my brain. I thought it was going to be kind of a silly, jokey kind of episode when I started into it. And by the time I was done writing it, I'm like, what is the nature of my existence?
Yeah.
Like, it literally makes you start questioning the nature of existence.
No, I remember when you shifted it, like, this has to be its own episode. You became very, like...
Oh, that's right. It was
going to be a side trail, and you're like, this has to be its own episode.
It was going to be a side trail.
I'm like, what?
You can't do that in a side trail. There's no way you can cover that in a side trail.
Yeah.
But okay, enough of the heavy thinking stuff. Let's finish this off with a visit to the Wolfman Puck's Cryptid Culinary Corner.
Your entree, sir. Smells good.
So, the question I pose to you this week, Moz, if the moon were made out of funky space cheese, how would you prepare it for our VICs, that's very important cryptids, at Wolfman Puck's Eatery?
Well, and I thank you. You actually gave me the basket ingredient ahead of time. So
I did. I'm trying to get better about that.
We don't have to argue anymore. I guess that's the way we're going to do it.
I don't like when you yell at me, boss.
But I am going to use that. I'm going to kind of get like one of those water space X platforms, and I'm going to just lay out all this artesian bread and cheese. I'm going to have one of Musk's rockets land right on there and kind of fry up some nice grilled cheese sandwiches for us. I'm going to serve that with Attack of the Killer tomato soup. For only homicidal tomatoes will be used in the soup. Wow. And then we're going to have like a monstery grilled cheese and kind of a classic.
Grilled cheese and tomato soup.
Yeah, but it's going to be Musk grilled cheese.
Grilled moon cheese grilled by the Falcon Heavy's rockets.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, that was impressive, Moz.
And I'm going to serve that with some Blue Moon. It's a wheat beer or a wit beer from Molson Coors.
Blue Moon.
And I'll arrange the mission to occur during the Blue Moon. And your waiters for that day will be, Monroe, the Blue Pod from Grimm, and maybe that Jacob Kidd from Twilight, just to keep the girls happy for.
Wow.
It's a slightly earlier reference, or is it? Even my new references are just old references.
That was really good, Moz. I gotta start cheating again.
Yeah, when you don't tell me what we're doing,
that's gonna be tough
to
to
do better.
beat.
Yeah.
I might have a shot here though. You ready? Because I actually wrote a pretty good one here too. I think this might be a tough one to tell who won. So for me now serving the moon is a very special gastronomic experience. So what I would do to make it a fully representative experience, I would set up a room for dark dining. Are you aware of the dark dining culture, Moss?
Oh yeah.
Dark dining, according to Wikipedia,
Space
for those who don't know,
watchers,
is the act of eating a meal without seeing the food.
Oh, that's not what I thought it was at all.
Oh, so you don't know what this is.
I do not know.
Or more simply put, you're eating in a completely dark room. Total blackness.
Mm-hmm.
The theme here is Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah, there you go.
See what I did?
Yeah.
Once sat at the table in the dark void, you will be given a hand-hewn rock skewer and the moon melted down in a fondue pot with some Hollow Moon New England-style hazy IPA from Hen House Brewing.
Wow.
Cooked into the funky space cheese to build a proper flavor profile and consistency. This will be served with a variety of breads, vegetables, and meats for skewering and dipping. For the beverage, see, because the Hollow Moon IPA is in the cheese, for the beverage, I would serve Salty Nut Brewery's Darkness Stout, ABV 6.3%. As a nutty stout will serve as a perfect complement to the hoppy cheese. Mm-hmm. Seeing that no one will be seeing a thing, this may well be a disastrous mess, but the experience will be something the diners will never forget. And fresh baked moon pies for dessert, Moz.
Wow. You know, I can upgrade what you did there. Have the little fondue things in craters themselves, like the dipping pot is in the crater. And then serve Outer Darkness from that Squatter's like Imperial Stout. I think Outer Darkness.
Outer Darkness. That's a good one too. Yeah.
So I think I helped you win, and then you won. Otherwise, we were tied. How about we do it that way?
That was maybe our most impressive Wolfman Pucks ever.
Wow. Like, really?
Well, as far as us both actually, I'm not saying comedy wise.
Yeah.
I'm just saying the actual meals that we put together.
Yeah.
We both did like these really cool meals.
I did grilled cheese and tomato soup.
Yeah, but you grilled your cheese with a Falcon
That's
heavy
true.
rocket.
It was a component of cleverness.
And the soup is made of homicidal killer tomatoes.
Yeah,
like,
to bring back the cryptid angle.
Pretty friggin' brilliant,
the
dude.
MLT community who
Brilliant.
expects that.
I think I won though. Mine had more elements. I'm going to take the trophy on that one.
I'm going to say that I helped you win with Outer Darkness.
Teamwork. We both win, Moz.
We both
when we work as a team, we all win. That is the lesson from this Wolfman Pucks. I almost said Ahuguano.
Happen again, but okay.
But anywho, I'm going to start wrapping it up here. Is there anything you want to add or subvert before we go, Moz?
I think we covered a lot of ground there.
Okay. I am going to do a little quick takeaway here before I close it up. One thing to take from this is all the math in and tangential to this story. Even outside of all the conspiracy and theory and hypothesizing, we may be looking at the key to finding other potentially similar, potentially sentient life. If we start looking specifically for star systems that have planets and moons with similar arrangements to our own, could it be more likely that we would find intelligent life otherwheres in the universe? I do think it's something to think about, and something I think might tie in with some other things we could cover, like the Giza Plateau, for instance. We will be covering a small part of this in the side trail, but I think we may well have a full-on episode about all that math in the future. That's maybe season 2 or 3. I'll come back around and do the actual math. And math doesn't necessarily translate well to audio.
Yeah.
So I definitely have to find a proper presentation style for that. And it wasn't going to fit in here. This is already an episode, and it's really a whole nother episode worth of stuff. So, but we'll see. Maybe I'm not promising anything. Maybe down the road I'll do a whole episode on that as well. If you want to get into the math and everything that I didn't cover, that book, Who Built the Moon by Christopher Knight and Alan Butler, it's got it all in there, man.
There you go.
And I felt silly buying that book at Barnes & Noble, honestly. Just Who Built the Moon. It's in big red letters on the cover. But once you get into it, it's about a lot more than just the potential of the moon being hollow. Mm-hmm. It's got a lot of stuff in there. Half of our side trail came kind of straight out of that book. The other half comes from another source.
But we know who decorated the moon. That was Slaughter Bartfast.
Slaughter Bartfast. Yeah.
Comes up a lot, that guy.
The whale and the pot of petunias.
Yeah, that was a great bit.
Yeah. But all right, that is way off the rails, so that means it's time to go. Thanks, everybody, for joining us for this Hollow Moon episode. Before you go, if you haven't yet, please take a second and just hit those happy fun buttons on whatever platform you're on. Like, subscribe, share it with your friends. If you have an extra minute, maybe leave us a rating and review. That would be absolutely appreciated and helpful. Yes, boss.
What if the whale and the petunia landed on a mascon area of the moon? Yeah. Just saying.
Okay. We will see you next Tuesday. Thank everybody for coming. Till then, have a good one, listener.
Monster Lore Tour Podcast.
If we go deeper, the moon could collapse. It's a balloon, you know.